It was a headline that stopped everyone in their tracks. Harvard professor admits the world's best English speakers might be Filipino. This headline was more than just news. It was a validation, a moment of undeniable truth echoing from one of the world's most famous universities. This story begins not with the headline, but with the quiet moments that led to it. In that sunlit classroom, surrounded by the gentle hum of her classmates, sat Maya, a young girl whose quiet determination set her apart. Her eyes sparkled with a mixture of hope and resolve, reflecting dreams far bigger than the four walls around her. Maya was not just another student. She was a girl with a fire in her eyes, a fire that burned brighter with every challenge she faced. Her teachers often noticed how she listened intently, absorbing every lesson as if it were a key to a new world. She grew up in a small, close-knit village nestled among the rolling hills of the Filipino countryside, far from the bustling city lights of Manila. The village was simple, with narrow dirt roads and houses made of bamboo and tin. But it was filled with laughter, love, and the scent of the sea. Maya's father was a fisherman, rising before dawn each day to cast his nets into the open water, hoping for a good catch that would feed his family and pay for Maya's school books. Her mother, strong and resourceful, sold the day's catch at the bustling local market, her hands quick and practiced as she greeted neighbors and customers with a warm smile. Though they didn't have much money, Maya's parents filled their modest home with encouragement and dreams. They believed deeply in Maya's future, reminding her every day that education was the path to a better life. Maya's dream was simple, yet profound. She wanted to become a nurse. She longed to help people, to bring comfort and healing to those in need, especially in her own village where medical care was scarce. The seed of this dream was planted when Maya's beloved grandmother fell ill. Maya cared for her, holding her hand and whispering words of comfort until her final breath. That moment, filled with both sorrow and love, became the driving force behind Maya's determination. Maya knew that to achieve her dream she needed to master English, the language of her textbooks, the language spoken by doctors and nurses in the city, and the key to unlocking a world of knowledge. Every night after a long day of work, Maya and her father would sit together under the dim light of a single bulb, reading old, worn newspapers in English. They stumbled over words, laughed at their mistakes, and celebrated every new phrase learned. "These words can build bridges," her father would say, his voice filled with hope. "They can take you places I've only dreamed of, and help you help others." In that classroom, Maya was more than just a student. She was the keeper of her family's hopes, the embodiment of their sacrifices and dreams. Her classmates admired her dedication, often turning to her for help with their own studies. Every time Maya spoke English, her words were woven with love, determination, and the memory of her grandmother. Her dream was not just her own, it was a promise to her family, her village, and to every person she hoped to help one day. In her heart, she carried the hope that one day she would wear a nurse's uniform, and her simple dream would become a reality for all to see. Professor Alistair Finch stood before the class, his presence commanding attention. The rows of students, notebooks open and pens poised, watched as he prepared to share his knowledge. Years of academic accolades and published works had shaped his reputation as a leading authority in linguistics, and he carried himself with the quiet assurance of someone who rarely questioned his own expertise. He exuded confidence, certain that his understanding of the English language was not just advanced, but definitive. Every gesture, every word seemed to reinforce his belief that he alone held the key to what was correct in English. Professor Finch was unwavering in his conviction that there existed a single proper way to speak English. In Ceylon, any deviation in his eyes was a mistake, a flaw to be corrected, not a difference to be celebrated. When students raised questions about local expressions or unique pronunciations, he would dismiss them with a wave of his hand, insisting on the supremacy of the standard forms he had mastered. When he first arrived in the Philippines, the vibrant city streets and the lively chatter of students only seemed to confirm his preconceptions. The unfamiliar rhythms and accents he heard reinforced his belief that English, as spoken here, was somehow lacking, an imperfect imitation of the language he cherished. As he listened to his Filipino students speak, he focused on their intonations and word choices, mentally cataloging every difference as a shortcoming. He took notes, not to understand, but to critique, his expression often betraying a subtle disapproval. In his lectures, he would point to a world map, highlighting countries like the United States, the United Kingdom, and Australia as the true bastions of English. The Philippines, he implied, was merely a footnote, a place where English was spoken, but never quite right. He described Filipino English as a diluted version, imperfect and incomplete. He failed to notice the growing discomfort among his students, their eyes cast downward, their voices growing quieter with each passing moment. The students listened respectfully, but beneath their polite silence a sense of unease began to spread. They exchanged uncertain glances, unsure whether to challenge the professor or simply endure his judgments. For many, his words reopened old wounds. They remembered times when their accents had been mocked, or when their best efforts had been dismissed as not good enough. The sting of being told that their voices didn't measure up was all too familiar. Yet Professor Finch, absorbed in his own theories and the sound of his own voice, remained oblivious. He continued to write on the board, his back to the class, never pausing to notice the growing distance between himself and his students. With every word, he was building an invisible wall, a barrier of doubt and discouragement that separated him from those he was meant to inspire. As the lecture ended, Professor Finch looked out at the silent room, mistaking their quietness for agreement. He smiled, satisfied with his performance, never realizing the deep hurt he had caused. The students, meanwhile, sat withdrawn and wounded, their confidence shaken, wondering if their voices would ever be heard or valued. As Professor Finch paused, Maya raised her hand. She stood up, her voice soft but clear, and asked to share a story. Maya spoke of her father, the fisherman, who taught her courage with his broken English. She described her mother, who learned English from market goods, using it to connect with tourists. Her English was the language of her heart, her hope to provide for her family. Professor Finch's posture changed as he listened, feeling her words. Maya concluded by saying their English wasn't broken, it was full of their lives and hopes. When Maya finished speaking, a profound silence settled over the classroom. It was not the awkward hush of uncertainty, but a silence heavy with shared emotion, as if every student in the room was holding their breath, processing the weight of her words. The air seemed to vibrate with the intensity of what had just been revealed, and for a moment, time itself felt suspended. Every student in that room understood Maya's truth on a personal level. Her story was not just her own, but a reflection of their collective experience. They had all lived through the same struggles, felt the same doubts, and carried the same hopes. In her confession, they recognized their own voices, their own silent battles, and the dreams they dared to nurture despite the odds. In that moment, Maya had spoken not just for herself, but for an entire generation of Filipino students. She gave voice to feelings that had long gone unspoken, articulating the pride and pain of growing up in a world where their language, their identity, was often questioned or dismissed. Her courage became a beacon, illuminating the shared journey of everyone in that room. All eyes turned to Professor Finch. The authority he once carried seemed to melt away, replaced by a visible humility and a deep sense of shame. For the first time, his face was unguarded, revealing the vulnerability of someone confronted with a truth he could no longer ignore. The wall of doubt and skepticism he had built around himself was shattered in an instant. The certainty he once held about language and belonging crumbled, leaving him exposed to the raw honesty of Maya's confession and the silent agreement of her peers. With a voice heavy with emotion, he admitted he was wrong, deeply, profoundly wrong. He expressed his sincere regret for the pain his words and actions had caused, and he thanked Maya for her bravery in sharing her story. In that moment, the classroom became a space of healing, where honesty and vulnerability bridged the gap between teacher and students. He confessed to having approached their language and culture with a closed mind and an arrogance he now recognized as deeply misguided. He realized, perhaps for the first time, that he had missed the very soul of the language he claimed to teach. The true essence of English in the Philippines was not found in textbooks or foreign standards, but in the lived experiences and dreams of his students. "You are not the outer circle," he said, his voice steady but gentle. "Your English is not on the margins. It is at the heart. It is vibrant, alive, and uniquely yours." In acknowledging this, he honored their identity and the legitimacy of their voices. Professor Finch learned, in that transformative moment, that language does not belong to those who claim authority over it, but to those who live, love, and dream in it every day. The classroom, once divided by doubt, was now united by understanding, a testament to the power of truth, courage, and the shared journey of learning. That day, Professor Finch put away his notes and changed the lesson. He asked the students to share their stories about their English. One by one, they spoke of resilience, creativity, and identity. Professor Finch listened, documenting life, not errors. He realized Filipino English was a standard in its own right. By the end of the class, the atmosphere was transformed. The students and professor shared a profound moment of truth. Professor Finch knew his work had to change, inspired by Maya and her classmates. Months later, Professor Finch stood at Harvard, ready to surprise his audience. He began with a picture of Maya, calling her his greatest teacher. He confessed his ignorance and shared Maya's story with passion and humility. He declared he was wrong about a correct English, calling it a living river. He presented his new thesis. Filipino English was skilled and heartfelt. The reaction was stunning, the hall erupting in applause. Professor Finch challenged the foundation of his field, lifting a voice long ignored. News of Finch's lecture spread, validating the Filipino diaspora. The headline was shared millions of times, a badge of honor. In the Philippines, it was a national celebration. People shared their stories with pride, using Pag's "Our English is real." Maya became a quiet hero, her story retold in countless articles. Her dream of becoming a nurse helped heal a national insecurity. This moment was about identity, being seen and heard for who you are. The story of Finch and Maya showed strength and diversity, challenging narrow views of excellence. This journey leaves us with a powerful message about truth in personal stories. Maya changed the professor's heart by sharing her truth. Your story is your most powerful tool, your truth. We've all felt misunderstood, but Maya's courage teaches us to speak our truth. The world transforms through honest storytelling and listening. Professor Finch's transformation was possible because he listened. We must learn to listen to others' stories, full of love and hope. What is your story? Your truth matters. Share it, speak it, honor it. Your story can change hearts and build bridges. Your story is your power. Use it.